Everything was zipped up and everything. Okay. All right. Anyway, you get where I'm going. So God came as a hardworking carpenter rather than an upper-class CEO. Rather than founding a kingdom based on power, he started a kingdom and a dynasty that was based instead on love. And sometimes we still, celebrate these leadership traits, these great traits of courage and wisdom. That's one of the things I love about being part of Scouts, is that they still highlight these values, these great traits, and really emphasize those things. I have to say, Jack, one of the images that was really burned in my mind from the Parade of Lights is when the veterans were coming by on their motorbikes. And I actually got a picture of you like standing up and cheering them on, valuing them for the courage that they've had in their lives and what they've done for us. And those leadership virtues, what happens is they're all transformed when they're wrapped in a spirit of humility. Jesus displayed that powerful reality in coming as a baby, in washing the feet of his disciples. That was the picture that he gave us of leadership. Washing their feet. And then, of course, dying in humility on a cross. It seems like God wanted to communicate with us very clearly about the kind of role and role model that he wanted us to be. For those of us who make Jesus our role model, humility is the prerequisite to greatness. So what happens when humility becomes kind of this part of our lives? You guys, anybody a George Clooney fan? Anybody like George Clooney? Okay. Some of us, we remember back when he was like in ER, like that was kind of his rise to fame, right? So he's been in the, what do you call the Las Vegas movies? Oceans. Yeah, the Oceans movies, right? But did anybody see Batman and Robin? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear the reaction. It is like horrible. It is like one of the worst movies that I think has ever been made out there. In fact, they should have stopped at one point. Yeah. They kept making more, and all of them were like so bad. Well, George Clooney was in this movie, and he recognizes how bad it was. And he said this. He said, I watch Batman and Robin from time to time. It's the worst movie I ever made, so it's a good lesson in humility. And he went on to say that movie was actually a turning point in his career because of the hard lessons that he learned from doing that movie, which came after the success of like ER and that kind of thing. And of course, he's gone on to win awards and do other great movies and stuff. But sometimes our lessons in humility kind of come at a cost to us, don't they? We're like embarrassed because we were so impressed with ourselves about something, and then all of a sudden we did something to totally make ourselves look foolish in front of others. Anybody else done that? I mean, that's me. I'm like, okay. Or we suffer a great failure after we convince ourselves or others that something's going to be amazingly great. Something that just came to my mind. Like I remember, a friend of mine was just like, he had found this thing to like strike it rich, right? It was like one of those schemes. Everybody knew it was a scheme. But he was absolutely convinced, he's like, I've done the research, I've done all this stuff, I know it's not a scheme, it's going to be great. Well, I'm sure you know the rest of the story. It was a scheme. It did not work out very well for him. And, there's a little humility, a humbling that comes in that, right? Or the realization that the success or the freedom that we have is built on the backs of others. That it came actually as a result of the blood and the sweat and the tears that others put into it to make it look easy for us. That's humility, right? And however it comes to us, it always transforms the way that we see the world. It always changes our perspective. Arrogance gives way to a humble confidence. Pride gives way to a quiet trust in grace rather than our own abilities and talents to carry us forward. Humility is basically a correct understanding of ourselves. Not too high, not too low. We see ourselves aright. And it's part of seeing ourselves in the image of God and who we truly are in that. I love this quote from C.S. Lewis. He's always, he could always write things just in the perfect way, right? He said this: "Do not imagine that if you meet a really humble man, he will be what most people call humble nowadays. He will not be a sort of greasy, smarmy person who's always telling you that, of course, he is nobody. Probably all you will think about him is that he seemed a cheerful, intelligent chap who took a real interest in what you said to him. If you do dislike him, it will be because you feel a little envious of anyone who seems to enjoy life so easily. He will not be thinking about humility. He will not be thinking about himself at all. If anyone would like to acquire humility, I think, tell him the first step. The first step is to realize that one is proud. And a biggish step, too. At least nothing whatever can be done before it. If you think you are not conceited, it means you are very conceited indeed." So, leave it to C.S. Lewis to put it that way for us. We are lifted when we come to a place of humility. When we make ourselves low, we find, just a sense of an inner lifting, feeling greater because of it. Humility has a way of telling the poor that they are accepted in love. Humility has a way of keeping us aware of our frailty just as we are of our great strengths. And in all of our lessons and seeing our role models, we learn to, like Paul said in this verse in Philippians that we read, that we learn to elevate others above ourselves, that we learn to serve others with our gifts and to see others as the treasures that God has made them to be. So that's my urge to you this Christmas, is let's look at it with a great sense of humility and the humility of Christ, and thinking more and more like he thought about us and about others. And I want to do this. I want to play a song that sort of is kind of the inspiration for this series. It's called Humble King, and we have a video. It's also the Vineyard Song of the Month. So if you want to check out Vineyard Songs, go to vineyardsongs.com, and every month they kind of come out with a new one or highlight a new one. And so I thought this one was really appropriate. And let's all stand together. And I just want to invite you, let's go ahead and back it up, Carlos. And then if you want to turn up the volume on channel 9. Even though it's a new song, I just encourage you just to sing it out. The words are pretty simple and the chorus is pretty simple.